What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Mentors Collective, where I'm bringing you entrepreneurs from all walks of life to help you create your business, grow your business, build passive income. And on this episode, because I love the topic of passive income so much and because I hate the idea of it so much, I brought in an expert in a model that we've all probably heard about, and that is the Airbnb model. And this guy, I'm going to introduce him in a second, but he's super special. He's doing $500,000 a month on his Airbnb listings and his other rental endeavors. So I'm super excited and we're honored to have him on the show. With that being said, Max, thank you so much for joining me. And my audience has a lot to learn from you. And go ahead and introduce yourself. And thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Hey, everyone. My name is Max Khaghan. I started out working in the Airbnb industry around 5 years ago. I started with one property in Manhattan that I leased and I subleased, and I grew from there. And now I'm trying to tackle hotels. So it's been a long journey, but I've started small and it's getting bigger and bigger as the months go on. So I'm excited to share what I have to say about the business and see if I can help anyone if possible.
It's super exciting. And I'm going to probe you with questions. I hope that's okay. Because I really want to dissect really how you got into this thing, how long it took you to build what is now, I would consider an empire. $500,000 a month is not something to, blink your eye at. How long ago did you first start making those investments and creating those listings?
So I started around 5 years ago in Manhattan. I actually started with renting my own apartment out. I was flipping houses at the time in Brooklyn, and I had no income because a house flip, you buy, you renovate and sell it. It's a process. I had no income. So I thought about this Airbnb model. I knew people were doing it. So I actually packed up my bags from my apartment. I started Airbnb and I saw it could work. And I saw that there was a nice arbitrage between how much you can rent a place for a long term, like a long-term rental, a 12-month lease, how much you can get short-term for it if you do it as a short-term rental. So I started with one, then I just kept growing from there into 10, 20, 30, 100, and just going up from there. So I started in New York. I tried a few different markets. I tried Puerto Rico, tried upstate New York, Mexico, Colorado, Jersey City, a few more markets. And it's been a long journey. There's been ups and downs, but it's been working. And yeah.
And 5 years, that's actually a lot less time than I imagined it would take to build what you've built. So that's super impressive and kudos to you. Now, the other really important and impressive thing that I kind of want to point out and harp on is that you did this starting with renting out a bedroom in your own home. You didn't have a ton of money to go invest in buying properties and leasing properties. You started small, you saw the profits from it, and you took those profits and went and I guess rented another place that you then went and rented out for short term.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I rolled my money into other properties and I got some investors together and just kept growing from there.
Awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's the reason the business is so great is because you can start with minimal investment and start small and get big, so you don't need to start big.
Yeah, don't need to start big. Exactly. That's what they say in real estate too. Like you don't need a ton of money to start. So what are some of the main lessons that you learned when first starting to run this model, start your business? Obviously, when you're starting anything new, you're about to lease your first property. You're really investing your money in this with this plan that you were going to lease this property, then go ahead and sublease it. You're going to list it on Airbnb. What were those first steps? What were some of those lessons that you learned in those first 6 months?
I learned a lot and I had a lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, you got to learn from your mistakes. If you don't, then you're bound to fail eventually because not every business is like smooth sailing like people think. But when I first started, I started with my own apartment and I started renting it out. And the second apartment I got was actually a great apartment. It was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment, and it was on 100th and First in New York City. It was actually a great apartment. With what I knew and the research I had picked the right apartment to do it on. I learned that a lot of people think that with Airbnb and some of these other websites, you can just post any apartment, but there's a lot of competition out there. So you want to make sure your apartment or your house has nice finishes and it's designed correctly, and it's not just some furniture that's thrown together and yeah, because people will not book it. So first apartment I got was actually pretty nice and I did a decent job with. The second apartment I got was not so nice. I thought it was going to work, but it didn't. So yeah, it's important to really take care of your apartments and your homes and make sure they're a place where people want to go. It's not just posting the apartment or listing and generating cash flow. It takes time and takes effort and takes good design for it to work.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about what kind of goes into creating a successful Airbnb listing. you bought the place. Obviously, you got to put together some photos. You need to manage it. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure now you don't manage all the places yourself. So what goes into the operational aspect of this business?
Sure. So I would say I'll kind of run you through an apartment or home from start to finish. So first, find an apartment or home in a good location that will work. There's some different softwares out there that are pretty good for data and showing you what the rates would be if you were to lease them out. One is called AirDNA.co. It's pretty great. So I would do that research, then find a few listings and contact the broker or the owner and tell them what your plan is, that you want to lease it for a long-term period and sublease the property. Not everyone will be okay with it, but some will. You might need to pay them a little bit extra in rent or give them extra security deposit because it's a business. It's not like a person that's renting it. And then I would design it really tastefully. Probably get a designer. You don't need to go too expensive on the furniture, but I would say go a little bit nicer than IKEA. It goes a long way and people appreciate it. If there's big areas in the home where you think you can make an extra bedroom, that's sometimes a great idea to add extra revenue. The big misconception is that studios and one bedrooms do a lot better than 4 or 5 bedrooms, but in reality, there's a lot less supply of the 4 or 5 bedrooms. So those tend to do pretty well. Your competition pool is a lot less because obviously every hotel is considered a studio or one bedroom, and there's a lot more of that. So from there, I would furnish it to the nines, and then I would get a really experienced photographer to come in there and take excellent pictures. That's really a selling point. So pictures are really key. That's really everything. So you want to make sure you have excellent photos. That's really the selling point. So you want to nail that. Then from
Where do
there,
you find your photographers? Or I mean, now I'm sure you have some that you love to work with, but when you first were looking for a photographer, where did you go?
I would ask around through friends for a photographer, but a lot of times you can call different brokerage firms. And they usually have good photographers because they take photos of their real estate to post online all the time. So they usually have good people. So I contact probably some brokerage firms in the local area and see if they have some.
Sorry, I cut you off. You can go ahead and continue.
Okay, from there, I'd post a listing. You want to give details on where it is, why it's a cool place to be. A big thing is putting a really, really good title because that's the first thing people see. You want to have a unique title that jumps out at people. You don't want to have a boring title that says 1 bedroom, 2 bathroom in the Lower East Side. You want to have something more exciting. So that's a big selling point as well. And yeah, from there, I'd post it. Look at the competitive rates in the area for 1 and 2 bedrooms. And it might take a couple of weeks to kind of figure out like where your sweet spot is, but eventually you'll find it. And you want to make sure you're on top of the rates and raising them accordingly. And you want to be setting like minimum stays. You don't want to be letting people stay for one night. Usually it's a hassle and it's not worth the stay. You want to set it for like 2 or 3 nights. And yeah, from there, I'd be renting it out. There's some different softwares you can use to let people into your homes. There's different doorknobs and door handles that are electronic that connect to the Airbnb. Those are pretty good. So I'd probably use one of those to keep the cost down.
Do you have a recommended one?
Yeah, right now we're using Links. It's working pretty well, and it does connect to a lot of the property management softwares. I'm not sure if it connects directly to Airbnb, but even if it doesn't, you can set the code on your phone and just tell the guests instead of going there or meeting them and doing all that. That's kind of it in a nutshell.
Okay, that's awesome. That's less steps than I thought. Now, how about when a guest leaves? Do you go in there personally, strip the beds, wash it down, clean up the droppings? Did you hire a service to come do this for you? And what does that service generally run?
I don't do it myself. I have a team of my own that goes in there and cleans. Something really important is to train your cleaning staff to really look through the apartment or home and make sure there's nothing broken or messed up or has any damages. Because if there is, you want to report that to Airbnb immediately and take some security deposit or figure that out. So that's super important when you're considering someone cleaning your home. And yeah, I mean, it depends where you are. All different cities and states are going to have different rates for cleaners. So Miami might be less than New York. Puerto Rico might be less than Miami. It all depends where you are, but I would probably call a few different cleaning ladies or cleaning companies and kind of shop around the rate.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And these are short-term rentals, 3 days at a time, here and there. And I know everyone's talking about COVID right now, but talk to me about how you're kind of dealing with what's going on now. Are you seeing way increased vacancies, especially in New York City? It must be crazy. Talk to me a little bit about what you're experiencing.
Yeah, so New York has been extremely vacant. It's been really tough. And same with Miami. Miami is getting hit pretty hard right now. So that's been really tough. My model kind of works well for what's going on right now in the economy and society. So a lot of hotels usually have like a front desk lady and a lot of personnel walking around the hotel and a lot of common space. My properties are really just rooms. So you're entering the room on your own. There's no one you need to interact with. You have your own keypad and like your own punch code. So you're getting in there. There's no one going in for cleaning during your stay, and that's pretty good for right now because no one really wants that, and you're also cutting costs. So it kind of works out. But I mean, yeah, that's how I've been operating, and it happens to work for this given time. But yeah, a lot of the occupancy rates and ADRs and RevPARs have really slipped, and it's been difficult. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity to maybe buy some properties that are distressed in the next coming months.
Yeah, and you just said most of your properties you rent out one bedroom at a time. You never do the entire property, or is that a tactic that you've experimented with and you found better results one way or the other?
Yeah, no, no, I usually rent out the full property at a time. I just find that like doing like one bedroom at a time is just it's a lot of busy work. You'd rather
Yeah,
just rent it to.
absolutely. And now you're doing something a little bit different. You're doing hotels. Talk to me a bit about how you got into that and how that works.
Yeah. So basically, instead of just doing one-off units in different locations, I'm really essentially taking a group of units that are already together
Mhm.
and running my operation on the whole building or hotel. Airbnb is just another booking platform that that's used to book a room. So booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, those are all booking platforms. Airbnb people think is different because you can post your one-off listing on it, but it's really essentially the same. I run the hotels like my Airbnbs. I do one clean per stay. I do self check-in, and I try and provide more beds than usual, and I try and make sure my hotel rooms have kitchenettes in them. I think that's a nice selling factor compared to just a room with compared to a regular hotel room. And yeah, that's what I've been doing. It's been working. People like it.
So you list the hotel rooms on Airbnb?
Yeah, so I list the hotel rooms on Airbnb, Booking.com, Expedia. I list them on everything all together.
Awesome. Very interesting. I guess you're taking that model and you're scaling, which is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So now for some fun stuff. You've been in the business for 5 years. Do you have a craziest Airbnb story? Maybe your guest like shat on the walls. What's the craziest thing that you've heard, seen, done, or experience that you've had?
So I have one interesting story. I have a friend of mine that's in the same industry. In his business, he really focuses on New York. And in one of his units, he had a squatter. He has a squatter in one of his units. So now he can't get that person out. And it's a little complicated with all the restrictions and like lease obligations you need to have in New York State. So that's a pretty nightmare story in terms of someone just ruining your operation. That's one in a million. So I wouldn't really be worried about that. The story I have is I set up an Airbnb a few years back, and I set it up in the slow season, which is January, February, March in New York.
Mhm.
And like during the slow season, you have to drop your rates because there's less clientele and you got to just fill your units. So you got to drop the rates. And my rates were really low on this brand new apartment I had. And when the cleaners came on checkout, there was weed everywhere and all the beds were broken and the place was totally trashed. So that's kind of my nightmare story about one of my Airbnbs. But in general, I don't really get those type of clients. People are usually respectful, and that doesn't really happen. So, but every once in so often, you'll get that. I would probably say less than once a year.
Okay. So I have a few questions about both of those stories.
So,
With the squatter, you can't call the police and have them kick the squatter out? That sounds ridiculous.
yeah, it sounds ridiculous. I don't have all the details on that story. I just know that he's dealing with that. So there must have been something that went wrong with the stay, and I'm sure the squatter is a professional squatter, so he knows like all the rules and what to do. So he got kind of screwed there. That's pretty insane. It's pretty horrible, but I guess it happens.
Yeah, it's horrible. Cheating the system and screwing with somebody's business. Anyways, I hope that never happens to you.
Yeah.
And going back to the second scenario, which is where they destroyed the apartment, your brand new apartment, and I guess it was listed through Airbnb, so insured, but I'm sure their security deposit didn't cover 4 broken beds. So what happens in that scenario?
So I did get some money, and Airbnb did cover some of the problems, but they don't cover everything sometimes. But I mean, they did help us out a little bit. But yeah, in that scenario, I basically had to buy everything new, and there was guests coming the next day, so it was we had to like hurry to find new beds and mattresses and clean the apartment. And we got nervous that the person would come back because obviously they were a little crazy. So we had to change all the door locks on the front doors. So that's why it's actually really good to have electronic door locks and keypads because you could immediately change codes once someone checks out. So yeah, that's my story with that. But
That's life as a business owner. You just have to roll with the punches. Okay. To conclude this thing, what are some of your give me 3 of your best tips for aspiring entrepreneurs who want to create this form of passive income and start creating their own Airbnb listings and making money this way? What are the biggest lessons that you've learned?
So I guess one lesson would be to really do research on the market and find out what kind of units are doing the best in that market. I find that the bigger units are better, but you want to really see, do the 1 bedrooms do better or the 4 bedrooms do better? So you want to find out what that is. And yeah, that's super important. Number 2, I would say you want to really make sure your property stands out and has some unique characteristics to it. I'll give you an example. I have a house in Puerto Rico that I bought, and it was a 4-bedroom house, and I converted it to an 8-bedroom house, and it had a swimming pool, and I built an indoor hot tub there, and it has a roof deck. So that property is super unique, and it really jumps off the page when people are scrolling through properties in Puerto Rico to go to. That always does well, and the occupancy is super high because there's nothing like it on the market. So that's number 2. And number 3, I would really just make sure to design the property nicely and not just throw some old furniture in there and just throw it together. And just make sure it's a nice apartment or home. Make sure the kitchen's nice, the bathrooms are nice, and it's well kept and cleaned and has character.
All right. Awesome. Max, thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to call you when I go to Puerto Rico. We're planning a trip. It's somewhere I've never been. I'm going to go take a group and stay at your house. All right. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you're watching the show and you found some value in this thing, I'm going to make Max come back and answer your questions. So drop your questions in the comments. You can DM me at Dr. J. Feldman. If you DM me mentor or mentors, you'll automatically be entered into a raffle to win a special interview with me. And Max, will you make yourself available if there's any specific questions about Airbnb? Would you do that for the guests?
Yeah, I will. I have actually have an Instagram page. It's called Air Formula. So you could find me on there and just DM or message me with any questions you might have.
Perfect. And I'll link your contact information, your Instagram in the show notes. And again, awesome episode. This is something that I've actually been really curious about for a long time. So you answered a lot of my questions. And this is what Mentors Collective is all about, bringing in people who are doing a whole bunch of different things to give aspiring entrepreneurs the right direction. So thank you for joining me. If you're not already subscribed, pound the subscribe button, drop me a like, and drop us a review. Thank you, Max. Have an awesome rest of your day, and peace out.